Good morning, everyone. It seems the microphone is working. Yes, very good. Welcome to the 2023 conference on sustainability in hydropower. Would like to welcome you all to Norway and to Trondheim. My name is Anders Iversen. I'm the water coordinator at the Norwegian Environment Agency, and I'm going to give you a short introduction here. I'll have to be a bit closer to my slides. So this is the second international conference on sustainability in hydropower. The first one was in Storforsen, Sweden, before we had the pandemic. We'll hear a little bit more from that from the next speaker. This year's theme is ecological mitigation, best practices and governance. And we have more than 70 presenters, 140 participants on site here, 34 or more online, and 13 countries represented. So it has been quite a big task putting this program together, and I would like to thank all the organizers, especially the scientific community represented by the participants in the HydroSen network, and among them especially the University of Science and Technology, who are hosting us today and this week here at their campus. It's the biggest university in Norway, and a lot of the people who are working in the hydropower sector have their educational background here from the NTNU. Other organizers are the agencies, the Swedish Agency for Marine and Water Management, who will be giving the next presentation, and the Norwegian Environment Agency. And we are also very happy to have 3 hydropower companies on board who are supporting and helping out with this conference: Trønder Energi, Vattenfall, and Sira Kvinna. So thank you to all these participating organizers. I'll give you just some short points about water in Norway. Compared to Mediterranean countries, for instance, we are a quite wet country. Large annual rainfall 1,414 millimeters on average annually, but up to 2,250 on the west coast. We have 490,000 kilometers of rivers and creeks, and of those 39,000 are bigger than 1 cubic meter per second flow. 450,000 lakes, 400 of them with area larger than 5 square kilometers, and we also have the 4 deepest lakes in Europe. And we have numerous waterfalls, the highest being 840 meters high. And I know that this is a conference about hydropower and ecology, but when we talk about the waterfalls, we need to remember that they also attract quite a number of tourists and also Norwegian people going for outdoor recreation. And I forgot to mention that on our first slide. This slide is one of the most known waterfalls in Norway, Vøringsfossen, which attracts more than 600,000 visitors every year. So it's a quite high number. So got to advance again to, yes. A few facts about hydropower and ecology in Norway. We produce approximately 130 terawatt hours annually, increasing. 98% of inland stationary power consumption is covered by that production, so it's very important for Norwegian industry, Norwegian households, our transition. For instance, we're leading in electrical cars. And we also have 50% of Europe's storage capacity in the dams. But also this impacts on 15 of the 20 highest waterfalls, 70% of the number of river basins, 17% of river stretch, and 30% of the lake area, approximately. And the effects, I'm just listing them. I know you're going to go much more into depth on this during the conference, but of course there is the reduced flow of water and sediments, there is rapid variation in the level due to ramping, reduced connectivity, fish that is injured or killed in turbines, the changing water temperature, and also oxygen supersaturation, some of the problems. The list is probably longer. So a little bit of the history of hydropower and ecology, the balancing act in Norway from the 1970s and onwards. But I've taken a quote from our then Prime Minister in 1963, because already in the 60s, there was a bit of conflict between hydropower development and ecology. And the then Prime Minister said, as long as the battle is fought over individual watercourses, it is always possible to mobilize so many arguments and so much political pressure that the development view prevails. To avoid the development where Norway's unique nature is consumed bit by bit, it was necessary to have an overall plan for protection. And we did get a river protection plan. The final version, or first final version, was made in 1973, so we are celebrating 50 years of that now. The last update was in 2018, where one more watercourse was added, so it's now 390 watercourses protected against major hydropower development. And the river basins of those cover approximately 25% of Norway. We also, in the 80s, got the master plan for water resources, and the idea with that was to prioritize hydropower development that had the best economical benefit and the minimum environmental loss. And then from 2003 onward, we had a national salmon river designation, which also the follow-up prioritized hydropower mitigation to help the wild Atlantic salmon in more than 50 areas in Norway. Jumping closer to our days, the Water Framework Directive was implemented in Norway starting 2007. But even before that, there was another quote from Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg. He's the guy we still listen to, right? We have now reached the point where the time for new large-scale hydropower development in Norway is over. The benefits of these developments are not great enough to justify the irreversible impact of nature. Untouched nature is becoming increasingly valuable. So around the year 2000 and onwards, there has been less focus on constructing new big hydropower and really more focus on mitigating the effects of existing hydropower and revision of licenses. Good. So to the left there, you see a big milestone was the national assessment of permit revision in 2013, where we assessed all permits that could be revised by 2022, and it was a collaborative work between the Water Resources and Energy Agency and the Environment Agency. So in the first river basin management plans in Norway from 2016 to 21, environmental objects were approved that may require revision of permit and increased flow in 160 water bodies, approximately 77 revision cases. And then in the updated plans, I think this is still slipping. I hope we're not going to have this problem. There it works. The new environmental objectives were approved that may require revision of permit and increased flow in 28 additional water bodies, approximately 13 new revision cases. So that's a bit the big perspective on where we are now in Norway. I think one important issue for this conference is the balancing of hydropower production and ecology. And I've tried in this slide to list a few of the international, European, and national frameworks. Yeah, now it works. So on the energy side, we have important agreements like the Paris Climate Agreement, Sustainable Development Goal 7 on clean energy, and 13 on climate action. And on the ecology side, we have the Montreal-Kunming Agreement on biodiversity and the Sustainable Development Goal 6 on water and 15 on ecosystem. That's something we have to balance because they all have to be fulfilled. On European scale, we had, of course, existing directives, the renewable energy and the Water Framework Directive, And then now with the Green Deal, we have the Climate Action Plan, Repower Europe, and the taxonomy goal #1 on climate, while on the ecology side, we have biodiversity strategy and taxonomy goals 2 on water and 6 on biodiversity. And then at national level, just to mention some things, we have a Water Resources Act that has to be balanced with the Biodiversity Act, and we have white papers to the Parliament on energy, and we have white papers on biodiversity. And of course, we have the water regulation, which is the Water Framework Directive transposed into Norwegian law. So on all of this, we have to find the right balance because we cannot choose to just fulfill one side and not the other, or the other side and not the first one. So we have to look for win-win solutions, or at least solutions that have the minimum of negative externalities on the other side. Finally, my last slides, just some comments of how we are managing important spaces in our water courses. And then I'm back to this not working again. I'll go over there to make sure it's working. I think this one probably needs battery. Yeah, thank you. So when it comes to the wild Atlantic salmon, which Norway has a major part of the remaining populations of in Europe, and for that reason we have a special responsibility for it, we have quite a good management regime. We are very good at doing mitigation measures. We have a good handbook on environmental design in regulated salmon rivers. So you could say we're quite good on that one. A species that has gotten more attention lately, but where we are still not as advanced, is the river pearl mussel. Very interesting species, can get up to 200 years old, and the ecosystem service of each one of them cleaning up to 40, filtrating up to 40 liters of water daily is quite important, but also their dependence on salmon or trout in the river system to complete their life cycle. We have a national action plan for it, but we still are not at the same level as with the management of salmon when it comes to considering the river pearl mussel in our regulated rivers. And then we have other important species on the Norwegian red list, exemplified here with the tiger beetle and the lamprey, which also live in these rivers, part of the biodiversity we are supposed to protect, but where we still have a way to go before we really have mitigation measures that also consider and protect these species. So to end my introduction, my hope for this conference is that we will all be able to share new knowledge, tools, and best practice examples for successful mitigation measures, that we will together identify sustainability challenges, win-win solutions, and good governance, and that we will also have a nice and successful networking regarding hydropower and ecology with colleagues from 13 countries. And I think the weather that the organizing committee has provided for this week will also help in these networking events. So, yes, that was a short introduction. And I will then go on to being the chair of the first session here. So I'm happy to give the word to Jakob Granit from the Swedish Marine and Environment Agency.